To truly understand Nietzsche, you must forget the idea that he hated people who were physically ill or had bad luck. His problem was with a specific way of thinking, a mental attitude that he believed was like a poison for the human spirit. He called this attitude weakness, but he meant something very specific. It is the habit of avoiding difficulty and then blaming the world for your problems. Think of a student who gets a bad grade. A strong mindset would think, I need to study harder or find a better way to learn. A weak mindset would think, the teacher hates me, the test was unfair, I'm just not smart. Nietzsche saw this second response everywhere. He observed that people often choose to see themselves as victims of their circumstances, their parents, their job, or society, because this story lets them off the hook. It is easier to blame others than to take responsibility. It is easier to feel sorry for yourself than to make a difficult change. This weakness is a quiet surrender. It is choosing to live in a small, comfortable cage because you are afraid of the vast, unpredictable world outside. Nietzsche believed that life is naturally full of challenges, pain, and struggle, just like a mountain is full of steep paths and rough weather. To try to avoid all struggle is like a mountain climber who refuses to leave base camp. You will be safe, but you will never see the summit. You will never know what you are truly capable of. He saw this weak mindset as a sickness that was spreading through culture, encouraged by ideas that celebrate comfort over achievement and pity over power. When you choose weakness, you are not just making a simple mistake, you are rejecting the very thing that makes you powerful and alive. You are choosing a comfortable but empty life over a difficult but meaningful one. For Nietzsche, this was the greatest betrayal of your own potential.
To understand Nietzsche's idea of the lie, you have to imagine a power struggle that isn't fought with weapons, but with words and ideas. He believed that our most fundamental moral concepts, the very definitions of good and evil, were not discovered through divine revelation or philosophical truth. Instead, he argued they were invented in a kind of psychological war between two different types of people in ancient society. On one side were the powerful and aristocratic ones, the warriors, the nobles, the leaders. These people were strong, healthy, and saw themselves as the creators of value. They looked at their own lives and what they valued, things like physical strength, courage, honor, pride, and the power to say yes to their desires, and they simply called this good. Their opposite, the common, poor, weak, or enslaved people, they simply called bad, in the same way you might call a poor harvest bad. It was a direct, almost childish evaluation of what was noble and what was common. This was what Nietzsche called master morality, and it was based on self-affirmation. But then a profound shift happened. The powerless people, the slaves, could not win a physical fight against the masters. They were outmatched in strength, resources, and political power. So they fought back with the only weapon they had, a revolutionary idea. Led by priestly figures, they performed a clever philosophical trick. They declared that the very traits that made the masters powerful were actually evil. They took the nobles' good and relabeled it as evil. Pride became the sin of arrogance. Strength became the sin of brutality. Ambition and wealth became the sins of greed and corruption. This was the birth of what Nietzsche called resentment, a deep, poisonous resentment that couldn't act outwardly, so it turned inward and became creative. This is the core of the slave revolt in morality. Having torn down the master's values, the slaves then built their own. They took their own weaknesses and declared them to be the highest virtues. Their inability to seek revenge was renamed forgiveness. Their necessity to obey was recast as humility. Their poverty and suffering were glorified as piety and a sign of being chosen by God. This new value system, which Nietzsche called slave morality, was incredibly successful. It spread through religions like Judaism and most effectively Christianity, which preached that the meek shall inherit the earth. This morality was brilliant because it made the strong feel guilty for their strength. A noble warrior who was once proud of his power was now told he was a sinner. He was psychologically disarmed. The weak had found a way to chain the strong, not with iron, but with ideas. Nietzsche's point was not that we should return to a world of brutal warriors. His warning was that our entire modern moral framework, the one that tells us to prioritize the weak, to feel guilty for our success, and to value equality over excellence, is built on this foundation of resentment. It is a lie not because it's a conscious deception, but because it presents itself as a universal, God-given truth, when it is actually the historical product of a specific group's desire for power. When you see someone shamed for their ambition, or when triumph is viewed with suspicion while victimhood is rewarded with attention, you are seeing the echoes of this ancient slave revolt. This system, Nietzsche argued, protects the herd and ensures everyone is safe and equal, but it does so by placing a cage on human potential, discouraging the extraordinary individual from rising above the average for fear of being called evil. It is a morality designed for survival, not for greatness.
At the very heart of Nietzsche's philosophy is a powerful, simple idea. The main force of life is not survival, but a constant, undeniable drive to grow, expand, and become more than what you are right now. He called this the will to power. This can be a confusing term because it sounds like a desire to control other people, but that is not what he meant. Think of it instead as the fundamental energy of all living things. A tree does not just sit in the ground. Its roots crack rocks to find water, and its branches stretch past others to reach the sunlight. It is constantly fighting to become a larger, stronger version of itself. An athlete does not just exercise to stay the same. They push through pain to break their personal records, to become faster and stronger. A person learning a new skill fights through frustration to gain a new ability. This internal struggle to overcome your current limits is the will to power. It is the engine of your life. Nietzsche believed that this drive is what makes us feel truly alive and fulfilled. The opposite of this is not hate or failure, it is stagnation. It is the choice to stay comfortable, to avoid challenges, to do only what is easy. When a person chooses to stay in a job they hate because it is safe, or avoids a difficult conversation to keep the peace, or spends all their time on distractions instead of building a skill, they are suppressing their will to power. They are choosing to be a low-burning flame instead of a roaring fire. This, for Nietzsche, is the real tragedy, not suffering, but a life that never truly lived up to its potential because it was too afraid to embrace its own inner drive. Every time you choose to do something difficult to improve yourself, you are saying yes to this drive. You are honoring the most basic command of life, not just to exist, but to become more.
To truly grasp Nietzsche's vision of the ideal human, the Übermensch, you must first forget everything you think you know about heroes or perfect people. This is not a superhero from a comic book, nor is it a flawless saint. Instead, imagine the ultimate version of a fully realized, authentic individual, someone who has taken the raw material of their existence and sculpted it into a unique masterpiece through relentless will and self-discipline. The journey to becoming this ideal begins with a radical act of demolition. The Übermensch first must destroy the prison of inherited values. This means critically examining every rule, belief, and should that has been handed down by society, tradition, and religion. They ask a simple but profound question. Do these values make me stronger, more alive, and more free? Or do they make me weak, obedient, and dependent? Upon finding that most societal morals were created to control the strong and protect the weak, what Nietzsche called slave morality, the Übermensch does not just get angry. They perform a revolutionary act. They discard them. They declare their intellectual and spiritual independence from the herd. But destruction alone is not enough. It would leave only an empty, cynical person. The second and most crucial step is creation. Having cleared the rubble of old values, the ideal human faces the terrifying and exhilarating freedom of a blank slate. There is no God, no king, and no sacred text to tell them what is right or wrong. So they must become their own God, their own lawmaker. They invent a personal moral code based entirely on what affirms life, expands their potential, and aligns with their deepest, most authentic self. This is not about creating rules for others to follow, but about crafting a personal compass that guides their own journey. This person is an artist, and their own life is their canvas. They do not seek meaning. They create it through their actions, their passions, and their struggles. This process is fueled by what Nietzsche called the will to power, not a desire to dominate others, but the inner drive to overcome oneself, to constantly become a greater version of who you were yesterday. The mindset that allows this is amor faci, a Latin phrase meaning love of your fate. This is the most defining characteristic of the Übermensch. It is an unconditional acceptance of every single event in one's life, the joys and the tragedies, the victories and the humiliating failures, the love and the heartbreak. They do not just endure suffering, they embrace it, understand it, and use it as fuel. They see their entire past, with all its scars and mistakes, as necessary to forge who they are in the present. A weak person regrets the past and wishes to change it. The ideal human looks at their life and says, if given the chance, I would will it to happen exactly the same way, again and again. They transform fate into destiny by actively choosing it. In the modern world, the Übermensch is not a mythical figure. You can see glimpses of them in the entrepreneur who leaves a safe career to build a vision no one else believes in the artist who breaks all conventions to create a new form of beauty, or in the individual who, despite immense social pressure, lives according to their own conscience and finds profound joy in their self-chosen path. They are not defined by their job, but by their attitude. They are free from the addiction to external validation, finding their worth within. They are disciplined, not because they are forced to be, but because they see discipline as the tool of self-creation. They are courageous, not because they feel no fear, but because they act in spite of it. The Übermensch is Nietzsche's ultimate challenge to us, to stop being a passive product of our environment and to become the active author of our own existence. To look into the emptiness of a universe without prescribed meaning and to respond not with despair, but with a joyful, "So what? I will create my own." They are the meaning givers, the self-creators, the ones who have become who they truly are.
Nietzsche's philosophy is not a museum exhibit to observe. It is a mirror held directly in front of your face, forcing you to look at who you truly are and the choices you make every single day. The grand ideas of the Übermensch, the will to power, and the rejection of slave morality all collapse into one simple, brutal question. What do you do on a Tuesday morning? The challenge is here, and it is immediate. It begins with a single, non-negotiable demand. Take total responsibility for your life. This is the hardest thing you will ever do. It means stopping the narrative in your head that blames your parents for your limitations, your boss for your stagnation, the government for your finances, or the world for your unhappiness. These are excuses, and they are the chains of the herd. From this moment, you must look at every circumstance of your life, especially the difficult ones, and say, "This is my doing. I allowed this, and only I can change it." This is not about fairness. It is about power. The moment you stop blaming, you reclaim the power to act. The next step is to embrace struggle as your new standard. Society has sold you a lie that the goal of life is to be safe, comfortable, and free of pain. This is a prescription for a slow spiritual death. Nietzsche demands you invert this.
You must actively seek out resistance. Choose the difficult conversation you have been avoiding. Take on the project that scares you because you might fail. Wake up an hour earlier to train your body or your mind. Every time you choose what is difficult over what is easy, you are forging your will. You are telling life, I am strong enough to handle you. You are building the internal discipline that makes external freedom possible. Finally, you must create your own meaning. You will not find your purpose in a holy book, a political party, or a corporate mission statement. The universe is silent. The abyss is real. Your mission is to stand at the edge of that emptiness and build a meaning so personal and so powerful that it lights up the void. This is your life's work. What do you value? What cause makes you feel strong and alive? What art, what business, what family, what legacy will you build that is uniquely yours? This is not a one-time decision, but a daily practice of choosing your path over the well-trodden path of the crowd. The herd will mock you, your own mind will doubt you, and comfort will constantly call you back. The challenge is to say no. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. It is your one and only masterpiece. Will you sculpt it with the tools of courage, responsibility, and self-discipline? Or will you remain a lump of clay shaped by the lazy hands of convention and fear? The choice is yours. Become who you are.